morning.
Because I check every morning, and I haven't seen him.
I had joined late, so maybe he had
Maybe he joined late too. Yeah, okay.
But I know he was there yesterday.
Okay, I'm gonna have to catch him one day. I think I got everyone, and people jump around on the list sometimes because of their mute or unmute status, so they bump to the top. So it's hard to tell if I caught everyone. Sule, Sule, there we go. And Willie. Okay. Okay, let's go with that. Let me know if you have any problems with recording. All right. Oh, we got one in chat. Where is Harold? Oh, has Harold not been here in a while either?
Did he not talk to you?
He did talk to me, but he said he was going to keep attending. So
he told me he withdrew.
Yes. Okay. So I was just waiting before. I wasn't sure if he was going to. So yeah, Harold withdrew from the program in between the course before the last one. But he wanted to keep attending, so I was cool with that. You can pretty much get a free education with me. You just won't get any credentials. If you know anyone who wants to come to class, I won't grade their stuff, but I'd be more than happy to see them. But yeah, so Harold withdrew from the program, so we're down another one. It's not uncommon. Usually in the first half of the program, I lose around 4 or 5 students, and I think right now that's 4. And then usually in the back end, a lot of times no one fails in the back end. It's just they realize that this stuff is not, as you know, this stuff is not for everyone. It can be tricky, and some people have to work really, really, really hard at it, and we just sometimes don't give people the time that they need, because the course moves quickly. I mean, it's like that in any program, right? University, college, not everyone makes it through. There's an attrition rate. It just so happens that programming has one of the highest ones. Okay. So, yes.
Do you have any problem logging into ITMS?
No, do you?
Yesterday it was like offline for couple
right now,
like for some it worked again. Sometimes it just like keep loading and nothing
happens. Yeah,
it worked 2 minutes ago.
I see. I'm experiencing the same thing. Just hold on a second. I'm just checking the domain mitt.ca. Okay. No, well, like it took a little bit longer to load than I would have been expecting. They could be running something else on the machine right now, which like a backup, because I know they were talking about performing some sort of migration or backup, but they didn't give me a date or time as to when. So I am a little bit surprised about that. Unfortunately, I can't do anything. I can send an email off if you're having problems. The other thing I can do is I can pull down. I have this stuff locally, so if all else fails, I can just post the files in Discord. Okay, and maybe I'll do that after. The only problem is the file format is different. I use a different file format than a lot of people, so you may not be able to view it properly. But I'll send it to you anyways, and you do what you can. Okay, I'll post in Discord after the lecture. If you're still having problems connecting, I'm hoping you don't.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. For now, you won't need to connect to the website. But again, at the end, just let me know. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And we'll get rolling. Okay. So we are at, here we are. class 3. Exercise 2. Oh, everything's unlocked. Cool. Is it? Is everything unlocked?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh. Okay, yeah. I'm experiencing the same problem. Okay, well, that's okay. I have the stuff locally. I'll send an email off after. The problem, not the problem, but like this is hosted at the school by staff at the school. So it's by the network and computing staff. So they're pretty good at setting this up and hosting it, but they're probably doing something. And because of that, it's not a business, right? So a little bit less chances of it always being up. So you're going to likely get the stuff in this format. This is called Markdown. Okay. It translates, it's like a really simple HTML. It translates into something like this on the right-hand side, but you'll get the stuff on the left-hand side, .md. You can just open it in VS Code, okay? If you want this view of it, or I'll export it as PDF for you. I'll export it as PDF and I'll post a PDF. That's easy for me. Okay, so question number 0. Run the following code in your browser's JavaScript console. Okay, so we did this in class yesterday, and this is essentially, I just wanted you to do, oh, okay, now shut up. I essentially just wanted you to do this on your own, so you can actually see what's going on, and you can actually experience it. Okay, and it's pretty straightforward. Oh, geez, what's wrong with me? Okay, so running this promise inside my JavaScript console, okay, and you can see the things that are happening inside the promise, they happen immediately, right? Promises, while they are asynchronous, the stuff that's inside of them is happening immediately, but it doesn't stop other JavaScript from happening in case console log took a long time to run or do whatever it's doing or figure out something, right? And then it resolves, but we don't get any value back from resolve, right? We can take a look at this promise and we can check out its status. What is the promise status? I wonder how you access that. Is there a, no, right? No, just curious. So we can actually visually see the status. I'm sure there must be a way to ask for the status of the promise. I'm just not quite sure how, but you're never going to do that anyways. The key here is that once it's holding on to this resolving value, right, and just waiting for someone to attach a then to it. Okay, so what did you notice about the execution of the promise? Did it execute immediately? Yes, it executes immediately, right? It starts running immediately. I do not have to invoke the promise. The promise starts running the moment it is declared or created, right? We're instantiating a new promise, essentially, right? So the moment it's instantiated, it starts running whatever the function we gave it, okay? Okay, any questions on that? Okay, and because this doesn't take any time, it pretty much resolves immediately as well, but it stays there and holds on to the browser, to the information. So when we come back and we paste this in, my promise then resolve, okay? I've resolved. This is able to extract that value from that previous promise. So we're attaching a then to it, and then accepts a function, with a value. And so essentially resolve is calling this and passing in this value into here. Okay, resolving, that's the value that was passed in from the promise, and I resolved. So this is a then. Okay, this is a then. And again, we can do that multiple times actually, because this promise never, just because it gave up, just because it provided the result to this then, doesn't mean it loses its result. It can then provide that result again to other thens who might be interested. Okay, so multiple things can attach to this promise. Any questions on that? Not a common thing, but something of interest anyways.
And I put something in the chat.
Promise status. Oh, okay. Yeah, I took a look.
Maybe you could.
My promise. Whoa. Promise. Oh. Do you guys see that bounce?
Console.log maybe?
Oh, yeah. Okay, doesn't matter. Not important. I've never checked for the promise status, so there's definitely a way to get it. Doesn't really matter. I've never checked for it, so no need to worry. Any questions about that? Any questions about how we can attach multiple thens, how the promises hold onto those values, how it runs the code right away as soon as it's instantiated? No. The then executes immediately as soon as we attach it to the promise. Okay, we can also just do this too. So I'm not going to assign the promise to a variable. I'm going to declare the promise, instantiate the promise, and immediately attach it then. Do you see that? See how that, and this will just resolve right away. Hi, I'm running, passing resolve to here, resolving, I've resolved. Okay, we can attach the then to a promise immediately. And that doesn't mean this will run immediately. That means this will run when the promise has resolved. So in this case, the promise resolves quickly because the code inside is fast running, okay? But the then still won't run until the promise has resolved. So this then here, this is waiting for this. So you can argue that this promise is blocking, but not for the rest of the code that comes later, only for the code inside this then. Does that make sense? We don't need to attach a then later. We can attach a then immediately. So in this case, right? In this case, this previous case, we're attaching a then to a promise which is stored in a variable. In the case I just showed you, we're just not storing it in a variable. That's the only difference, really. Okay. Questions on that? Okay. Create a new JavaScript promise, generate a random number. If it's greater than 5, promise resolves, returns a positive message. If the value is less, returns a negative message. Use this promise with a then and catch chain. So then and catch chain. So we're looking like this. Guess I should do a little something here. Solution. New promise takes a function. I'm going to use arrow functions here. And it takes the function, accepts 2 parameters, resolve, reject. Again, you can call these anything you want. You don't get to control what goes into them, but you can call them whatever you want. Okay, and we're going to do a const random number. Rando equals math random. And if the number is greater, how do I switch tabs here? Oh my goodness. If the number is greater than 0.5. So if rando greater than 0.5, then resolve. Then resolve. Resolve. Yay. Positive message. Otherwise, reject. Ooh. Okay. And we are adding a then with 2 functions, the yay and the nay, the resolve, the reject, the resolve and the catch. Okay. So we're going to catch that with the function, this one, message, or with this one. I should probably do all arrow functions here. And we'll just console.log the message. I don't understand. There we go. Bad message. Okay. And we'll run that. And it will just generate a random message every time. Boom. So that one was caught. That one wasn't, that was resolved. Okay. What's the alternative way of writing this? We looked at catch yesterday, right? We looked at catch yesterday?
Yeah, we did actually, just right at the very end.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the alternative way of writing this? Like that. So we're attaching a then, positive, and we're attaching a catch, negative. Same thing. Boom. Just, I actually like this way better. The syntax is much cleaner. It's much easier to identify things. Okay. Okay, questions? Oh, all right.
Sorry, sir. I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you show me the previous syntax, like the one you didn't add catch?
There you go.
Oh.
So it looks like this. Looks like this.
Oh.
Right, so it's a function and a function, 2 functions. It takes 2 functions. The then can accept up to 2 functions. This one on the left-hand side, this first argument to the then is
Yeah.
the resolve function. This second argument to the then is the reject function. Okay,
Oh,
but alternatively, you can just make this a dot catch, and it just makes it a little bit easier to read
okay.
instead, and it means the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Question 2. What are we doing for question 2? Instead of generating a random number, pass a variable into the promise somehow. We looked at this yesterday. How do I get a variable into the promise? Yeah, I could do this. Let number equals 10, but I don't really like that. That's not how I like to do it, because we're just declaring a global variable. I want to pass a value into the promise. And so what we want to do is we're going to want to wrap this promise in some function. Okay, so we're going to create a function. And this function is simply going to return the promise. So we can pretty much take this whole thing and stick that just right there. Not pretty, take this then and catch out. We don't want to put that then and catch in there. We want to put that then and catch outside. Okay, otherwise it's not really doing what we want it to do. And then we provide this value in here when we call it. So it would look like this: promise me, and then the value that we want, 20. Okay, and so we're passing in the value that we want into this function, and this function then allows us to evaluate it. Actually, I'm going to randomize this. I'm going to do math.random. How can I generate a random number between 1 and 20? With math.random. Let's do a little bit of math. What does math.random generate? 0 to 1. Yeah. So what if I did times 20? What does that do?
0 to 20.
0 to 20. Yeah. Actually, so we could do that. 1 to 20 would be, we'd have to go, we could go stop ceiling. But that would always be 1. Yeah, times 20. Times 20 is fine. 0 to 20. Okay. And this will give us a random number between 0 and 20. Okay. And if that number is greater than 10, okay.
Just a thought, can we go math.random multiply by 19 and plus 1? Would that work?
Yeah, you could do that too. Multiply
okay.
by 19 and plus 1. Right, that's 0 to 19 plus 1. And then I would do floor of that. This will be, this will work, right? This will work, but it would be could be 19.9 or 20.9, right? But that's fine. Okay, so here we go. So we're attaching. So this is the syntax that you might see very often, okay? Where you have, so this is important to know, okay? So this is something that you will see. A function that returns a promise, okay? Not crazy, okay, not crazy. It takes the value and that's how it injects it into the promise, right? It's not actually injecting it, right? This value exists out here. It's just scope. It's just variable scope. That's all it is, right? It exists out here, which also means it exists inside here. okay, because it's variable scope. This other syntax down here is what you might see pretty often too, where we don't put a semicolon at the end. If we do, then this doesn't work, because essentially what we're doing is we're taking a really long line of code, because this is essentially this line of code. Right? We're taking this super long line of code and we're breaking it up and we're indenting it to indicate that it belongs to this piece here, that these dots belong to this piece. So this is a pretty common thing that you'll see, is when you have many methods or functions chained together and it starts to form a really long chain, people will break it up onto the next line, and the next line will usually begin with the dot. So someone's eyes will go to it and say, dot then. Oh, well, I know dot something means a function call, which means this is being called, must be being called on something else the line before it, okay? And we only put a semicolon right at the end of all the function calls, okay? Any questions about that one? Okay, everyone's pretty confident with this stuff. And Q3. So yesterday I wanted you to use either what you used or what I gave you to break up and load the scripts. Okay, so yesterday I gave you the solution. So we'll take that solution, we'll convert it. So I think that's this one here, yeah, load script. So let's convert this into promises, okay? So what we did was we wanted to do them in order. So we had to do a new promise. So my load script can look like this. Function load script, so no different. Okay, the only difference is that we can return the promise just like we did before. And this is, sorry, just like we did in the previous question. Okay, so we're going to return new promise. We're going to do all this stuff in the promise. And instead of calling add event list or load callback, we don't need to do that anymore. Okay, the only thing we're going to do is after we append this, now we're going to resolve. We're going to add event listener. After the event listener is called, all we're going to do is call resolve. So the event listener, remember, the event listener is listening for that script loading, right? Is that script loaded? Yes. Okay, now we're just going to call resolve. We don't need to pass in any parameters into resolve, okay? And actually, reject. Okay, we don't need to pass in any parameters into resolve. Oops. There we go. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it's going to start loading the script. It's going to append it. When it's done, it's going to call resolve. So this will look like the following. We don't need to pass in callback into this load script. So instead, it goes like this. Load script returns a promise, dot then. And inside dot then, now we can load the next script. Okay, we can, so with all of these promises and stuff, I don't need to accept a parameter if I don't want to. No requirement, right? This parameter here would be matching this parameter here. But I'm not, and actually, I don't even need to put this in a function. This is invoking a function. I can do this. Resolve itself is a function, right? Because I was invoking it before. I don't need to call it with any parameters because I don't care about the parameter that's coming out. The thing I care about is I care about the fact that I care about the timing, right? Only pass things if you care about them. In this case, I'm not even using reject. So I don't need it. I can do things like that. You can do things like that. You just have to be thinking about what's going on, how these things are connected, why. Okay, so I'm not using the parameter, so that's fine. And this is what it would look like as a promise. Okay, same thing, similar thing, but different, right? I'm not passing the next script in as a callback. I'm chaining it. And actually, yeah, I would need to do that. There we go. This is correct. This is correct. Any questions on this? A little bit different. Okay, it takes a little bit of thought to do this one.
So this is really minor. On line 45, the indentation goes a little backward, not on the load script. Oh, because it's attached to them. Sorry. Okay.
Yep.
Hey, John, something else. Oh, okay, never mind. I was just about to ask if there should be a semicolon there and you put it in.
Yeah, I'm just cleaning up my semicolons here. Oh, shouldn't be one there. Yeah, there should be one. Yeah, right, because this belongs inside this function. This then is attached to this load script, which is why there's no semicolon here. Okay, and this actually.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yep.
In the line 42 and 43, is that okay not to use the arrow function? It's just use the load script. The load script is a function.
No, because here, and I thought about that too. Good question. And here's the big challenge. How do I, so the question is, well, if the load script is a function and I'm calling the function, can't I just do this? Right, because then is expecting a function. Can't I just do that? And the answer is no. And I'm going to stop and prompt you, class, and tell me why. Tell me why this. Tell me why this. So actually, let me copy this. Tell me why these two are not the same.
Because you are passing a different things for that. I don't know if it's I explained it right. It's just the first one is passing the load script instance to them, but the second one is like running it with
exactly. Okay, so this function here, let me fold it up. The function that I'm passing here, this arrow function, or to even make it a little bit more obvious, this function, this anonymous function that I'm passing, actually even better, let's rewrite this a little bit. So I'm taking that anonymous function out and I'm rewriting it as a function declaration, right? And then I'm going to take my custom func and add it in there. Now it's a lot more obvious what the difference is, right? Do you see what the difference is between these two things, Sule? And everyone else other than Yushin? What is the difference between these two things? So here I took out the anonymous function, right? Because it was an anonymous function before. It was like this, right? An anonymous function, no name. Forgive the indentation problems, no name. And I moved it into a named function called my custom func. What is the difference between these two? Load script, loading my custom func, and load script running load script part 2. Yushin got it, but I still don't think everyone else understands. And at this point in time, I expect 75% of your hands going up.
You mean put a function in an anonymous function will not make some problem about these?
Nope.
No.
What happens when we put parentheses on a function? What's the difference? Okay, let me ask you this. What's the difference between this and that? Okay, all right. Let's see, I gotta pull this out of you. What's the difference between this and this?
Passing parameter.
Come on.
One is in
Instance and or function.
This is not being invoked. This is being invoked. Okay, when you add parentheses to a function, you are invoking it. When you don't have parentheses, you're not running it, right? We should know this by now, okay? When you add parentheses to a function, you are running it. So this is not the load script function that's being passed to then. This is the result of the load script function being passed to then. Okay, this gets invoked immediately as the JavaScript starts loading. It doesn't wait for then to execute, it runs it right away. We want to say, when you are ready, run the load script function. When you have completed your promise, when you have finished loading your first script. This is very, very important, okay? I don't mean within the context of promises. I mean within the context of passing variables around and understanding the difference between functions, invoking functions, and passing functions, okay? And this is stuff that we've covered already, right? When I have this event listener, I'm not calling resolve, I'm passing resolve as a function, and the event listener will run it for me. And we're used to that. We're used to doing this. I am not running this function. I am passing this function, and the event listener will run it when the event listener fires, when load fires. Okay, I'm plowing forward under the assumption that you can all figure this out very quickly because we've already covered this. Okay, so this is really, really important. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm just surprised that more people didn't have the answer to that. Okay, so actually, let me come back to your question because we're not done. The problem with passing in load script without a parameter, and this is a common problem in JavaScript, is that, yeah, load script is a function and then takes a function. And so I can't do it like this because this invokes that function. So I can't do that. But I need to pass this parameter to it. Right? I can't do it like this because it's expecting a string. And I can't do it like this. I have no way, so I have no way to get that string in unless I do that. But if I do that, then I'm running the function. And that's not what I want either. I want to pass the function and it will run it for me. So the problem is solved by wrapping it in an anonymous function. That's how you do it. That's why you wrap a function in an anonymous function, just so you can pass a parameter to it. Otherwise, you're right. You're right, too late. I could have done this, but unfortunately, it just doesn't work. Unlike here, where I'm not passing anything. If I wanted to provide a result from resolve, I can't do it like this. Okay, this doesn't work. I need to do this. Now it works because I can't invoke, I'm not allowed to invoke that function here. I mean, allowed to, it's just my results will be screwed up.
Oh, I see. I was, when we were learning the event listener, I was trying to like pass a parameter into that, but I couldn't. I asked Zach at that time. He told me that I'm gonna learn that after, so I didn't bother that.
Yeah, so it's not really like, it's not really something to learn, right? It's something that is kind of just sitting there obvious, but we never stop and think about it, right? We know that we can't invoke functions when we're passing them as parameters, because that's not what we want to do, callback functions, right? That is. And so in order to do that, we're going to do this a lot starting now. We're going to start doing this a lot starting now because we're writing more complex stuff. Any other questions about this? The only way you're going to experience this is if you try it. So my recommendation is don't try to always write code that's working, right? This is not a lot of code. And it's worth trying to write code and be like, why doesn't this work? Let me try this. Why doesn't that work? Why did John do it like this, right? And that's when you play around with things, that's when you start experimenting with things, that's when you really start to learn a lot. Like I said, when I was young, I used to run viruses on my computer because I wanted to see how they work. I want to experiment. I want to see what it's like to clean it up. What does it do? How does it work, right? The results were not good, but I learned a lot. Okay, just experimentation. And it costs nothing to experiment, except some time. Okay, I'm going to post these. Hopefully the website is working now. I don't know, we'll see.
No, it's still not working.
We'll find out right away. It might be, it's probably on and off, I'm guessing. Oh, it's definitely off right now. Okay. I'll hold on to this. Okay, so today we don't have a ton of stuff to go over, but we don't have a ton of time either. So, so today we're going to look at chaining promises. Examples.js. All right, so so far in our promises, we've only been really doing one. I'm gonna grab this promise from this morning. Okay. This is the one that generates a number. If the random number is greater than 5, awesome. Otherwise, boo, right? Resolve, reject. okay, and we're adding a then and a catch. But in reality, there may be more work to do here, right? We can do, and this is actually for reals. This is going to happen, okay? Probably starting on Monday for you, when you are going to have multiple pieces of asynchronous work occurring. For example, in the example I gave on the first day with callbacks, you had multiple pieces of asynchronous work, right? You had a bunch of set timeouts running. So let's do something like that, where we're only going to use resolve for now. So I'm going to take away that resolve, that reject, and we're only going to use resolve. We're going to use some set timeouts, okay? And we're going to do stuff like this. Set timeout, and inside here, we're just going to call resolve. And we're going to pass, a number. We're going to start with a counter. We're going to start with a counter equals 0. And all we're going to do is we're going to increment that counter and we're going to print it out. So we're going to console.log it. We're going to repeat the same thing that we were doing before. Okay, we're going to increase it. So we're going to have multiple pieces of asynchronous work. So this one is waiting. So this one is waiting for that one. The next one's waiting for the previous one. So they're all waiting on each other. How do we do something like that with promises? Okay. So we're going to do a set timeout, console log the counter, and we're going to pass in the counter plus to resolve. So that will come in to our then, right? And if I just console log that counter, everything would be fine. Everyone would be happy. No one would have any questions. I'm hoping, right? Except for this indentation. That's questionable. There we go. Okay, are there any questions right now on this basic promise that's going on? This is not nothing. This is what we learned on the first day. This is what we looked at the first day, except we didn't have a then, right? So the then is going to get the result. Oh yeah, we did have it then. Yesterday was the first day. Okay, counter plus, interesting. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Let's go like this. That's better. Okay, so prints out 0, prints out 1. I'm passing the value over here after half a second. Now, how do I get this to do counters? How do I get to do the next one? Well, I can do this. Ooh, actually, this is interesting. Actually, I don't know if I can do this. Oof, I don't know if I can do this. Okay, I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. This is too hard. Okay, so let's just do it like this. Instead of doing things in an asynchronous way using set timeout. Set timeout, the problem is set timeout is just a problem because it itself is a function. So I'm running a function in a function and it causes some difficulties, and it would be really difficult to demonstrate what I'm trying to demonstrate with that. So instead, I'm just going to show you this. We'll just do a counter and we'll increase that counter, okay? Counter equals 0. We won't do this using set timeouts, but trust me, this is asynchronous. And we will resolve plus counter. So that'll, we'll do a console log. So nothing super special. Prints out 0, 1. Okay, prints out 0, calls resolve. Resolve hits this then, prints out the next one. We can add as many thens as we want. So what we're doing here is we're chaining thens. When we return a value to then, like this, when we return from a then, what's actually happening is the then returns a new resolved promise, which is why the next one will take the value from the previous one and it will run it once it's done. So these are all asynchronous. I was going to show you that with set timeout, but it's not, doesn't work super well. So what I have here is I have the promise, then the then being run on the return value of that promise, then the next then being run on the return value of the previous then, the next then connected to the previous then. They're not all connected to this promise. It goes this, then this, then this, then this, and we're passing down the piece of work as we go, right? So this creates this like this step of asynchronous work. So once because what we're going, the reason why we're going to use this is it's not uncommon for us. So we're going, starting Friday, we're going to be going and reaching out to external websites to pull in information. Okay. And so you might, I'm going to tell you to write programs that goes to this website, pulls in information, and then uses that information and goes to this other website to combine it. But you need A before B, before C, before D. Okay, so you have to go out and do some work first. So you go and do work first, then you get the results of that work and you use it to do some, combine it with some stuff and do more work. And then use the results of that work to do more work. And you use the results of that, right? So you need this ability to chain things and do things in order. The problem is with all of these pieces of work, the concept again being that this is asynchronous, we don't know how long each of these pieces of work are going to take. So it goes, run this, take as much time as you need. When you're done, then run this. And run this, take as much time as you need. When you're done, then run this, right? And we're able to pass through whatever we need from one to the next, to the next, to the next, okay? And this will 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we are allowed to chain as many promises together as we want. When I return counter, it looks like I'm just returning a number, okay? But then does some magic in the background and it actually is doing this, okay? Actually, it looks like, yeah. This is what's actually happening on this line right here. Okay, it looks like I'm just returning a number, but then is doing some magic in the background. And it's actually creating a new promise, instantly resolving it, and that counter. So this block that I have highlighted is actually a promise. If I return, if I don't return, okay? So like if I were to do this, whoops. A is a promise, oops. A is a promise, and it's not this promise, it's the result of this promise. It's the result of this then, because I said that that is actually returning a new promise that is already resolved. And if we want to see it, we can. Let's go bring it to the browser and take a look. Okay, that might make more sense that way. So the value of this, of A, the promise, should be 0 plus 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 2, right? Counter, the value of counter here, what that I'm returning should be 2. Or I mean, like, better yet, why don't I just return, hey, I'm in here and not here. Okay, so check this out. So let's take a look at A. A is a promise. See? A is a promise. And look at the value. Hey, I'm here. It's this. It's not this one that we called resolved on. Because when I return inside of a then performs some magic and it turns it into a promise. Which is why I then add another then onto it. Because if A is a promise, then I can say A dot then. And if I return from this then, that's also a promise. Then I can add another then. So this is called chaining thens. Okay, as long as I return from the then, it's creating a promise. It doesn't matter what value I provide in the return, because it just passes that value along. As long as I return, that's all that matters. Questions on that?
I have one.
Yep.
So I tried the same thing in my, not exactly browser console, but node console. Since the let counter is in the new promise area and not applied to then, that counter variable is not assigned when then comes. How is yours reading and mine is not?
Are you, well, like I'm passing my counter. It's not reading this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not reading, oh, sorry. Remember, it's not seeing this. It's passing, it's providing a parameter to, it's providing an argument to a parameter. And
it's reading the C that is the result counter.
It's just a parameter, right? This is a parameter. And,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, you get it?
Yeah,
okay,
it's the result of resolve, right?
Yeah. This is essentially passing a value down into here. And I can call it whatever I want. I'm going to call it John. And then it's John plus plus. I can call it, it's just a parameter. Because this is just a function. This is just an anonymous function. Like all this stuff that I have highlighted here, other than the word then and promise, they're just functions and parameters and arguments. That's all it is, right? It's nothing, variable assignment, variable scope, other than the weird stuff that's happening with the return value, that it's becoming a promise. There's really not a lot of like magic happening here, which is why understanding functions and parameters and arguments and everything that we've been learning so far is so fundamental to understanding everything else in the language, because stuff like this happens, right?
So I can also like passing a lot of stuff in resolve, and then
well, you remember though, you can you can't pass multiple things. So I can't do counter and something else, right? This doesn't work. So if you want to pass multiple things, you either have to make an array out of it or make an object out of it, and then pass
I
that.
mean, like passing like a block of code.
Yeah, you can even pass in a block of code. You can even pass in a function if you wanted to. Like, you're in control. Counter can be a function. Like, I can pass in this.
Then it will return the result for the parameter of then, right?
Yeah. So we can pass in whatever we want, but we can only pass in one thing, and it will go into here. Yeah. Yep. And then the same thing happens, right? This next one passes it into this one here.
Sir, I have a question. So that means if you don't return the things in then, so you cannot do the then chain, right?
Correct. If I don't return something in then, the then chain breaks. And if it doesn't, yeah, it still runs, but I'm not passing in anything.
Okay, that's why I got that result. Okay.
Why is it? Why am I not getting anything? Why does it still work?
It doesn't return. It doesn't have any value to pass on to the next parameter. If
Correct.
I'm saying it right. Okay.
You are. So let's look at what I wrote here. All right. It's actually doing this and taking the value that I provided, right? But if I don't provide a return, what do functions return by default? Okay, that's what functions return by default. So it's still creating a new promise, but the value that is passing through is now undefined, which means undefined plus plus, console log undefined plus plus is definitely not a number. If I took this and I brought this over to here, I just refresh this. There you go. All these little things starting to add up and build on each other. Right? So yeah, if you don't return something, it will return something for you, and it's probably not what you want. So that's a problem. Okay. More questions on that. Sorry, today's lecture is going to go longer than I expected, unfortunately. I've got a couple more things to cover. When I generally talk about this, I just gloss over the idea that these are promises, and no one really questions it. But I'm glad you are. But I'll be quick. Okay, so in addition to this like giant chain of promises here, we can also add in catches. Is that correct? I'll do it like that. Okay. We can also add in catches. What's wrong with my syntax here? Oh yeah, here. Okay, we can also add in catches. Now these catches don't execute unless an error happens or unless a reject happens. So what would happen here if I called reject instead of resolved? I need to have a rejected here. If I called reject instead of resolved, okay, it will just hit this. Okay. 0, 1. So it jumps into here. Actually, to prove that, let's just add something here, error. So you can tell that it skipped over this then and that then, and it went directly to the catch. So the way that catches work inside these chains is they, as soon as a reject occurs, it is executed. Now, this reject can actually occur anywhere. It jumps over all the thens. So actually, let's talk about how this works first. It jumps over all the thens in the then chain until it finds a catch. So this reject occurs. It says, nope, this is for resolve. Nope, this is for resolve. Oh, okay. Here's someone who wants to deal with my error. The catch. The catch is catching this error. So think of it like this. The catch's responsibility is to attempt to fix the ship. The ship is turning over, right? It's going to fall. The catch is trying to, I'm going to do my best to get this thing back on track. So we can do anything that we want to here in an effort to try to get this back on track. If an error occurs, right? Sometimes we can look at the error and say, oh, okay, this error occurred. That's okay. I'm going to do this instead, right? And so this gives us an opportunity to fix things and get everything back on track if we want to, okay? And then things pick up normally. So if I wanted to, I can return a number. I can return anything, right? Like I can return anything. As you see, when I run this, it continues to run the thens after. So my goal inside these catches is to try and fix things. Try to get things back on track if possible. Okay, I'm not going to show you how to do that. I just want to tell you what they're for because you're going to see them. Okay, and I want to show you this chain. So same thing applies here. Catches also, if I return, they return promises. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call error, and I'm going to fix things by providing a number in my return. 10 is going to go in here, so it's going to be console log 10, 11, 12. Okay, so that's all because of this reject. Now, these can also, just one sec. I just want to see the exercise for today. We may not need to cover this. I mean, it's useful, but let me refresh this. I cover this every year, but I just, honestly, I don't usually think about it. I just do it. But I'm wondering if we really need to. And I'm going to look at the exercise to see if it has anything about that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. We'll finish this up. Okay, so reject forces an error. I sent you home some reading yesterday, which I'm sure most of you never read. But inside that reading, it talks about throwing new errors. So something that we've never looked at yet. Reject is essentially the equivalent of this. So in JavaScript, if I had a function, just any function, I'm just going to write a function, test, and I do this, throw error. And I'll take this and I'll call it test. Okay, let's bring this over to our JavaScript console. So I'm declaring a function called test, and I'm throwing an error. I'm throwing a string. Okay, it doesn't have to say error. This string can be anything. Okay, it's this keyword throw. Uncaught error. So throw creates a new error. We have never created errors intentionally before, right? JavaScript has always just created errors for us. And we can throw whatever word we want. Error, ER, okay? That is the equivalent of calling reject. So this could be reject or it could be throw, which means we can throw errors anywhere inside of our then as well. Solve. So inside of this first then, an error is going to occur. I'm going to throw it. Now, the reason why I'm throwing it is because I'm trying to demonstrate a contrived example of occurring. Let's perform an error. Wait, how can I do an error? What would be an error? Oh, yeah, I know. John dot do something. This is an error for sure. This is an error, okay? Because John is a number and it does not have a function called do something. And so this function, this will be caught by this catch and it will print out the error and then it will continue to run. Okay, let's watch this. Error, John.doSomething is not a function. And then it jumps to my catch because an error occurred somewhere along the way. So this is why catches are useful, why they're important, because they give you opportunities to catch errors that have occurred and steer it out of the way and get back onto the road, right? So this forced an error. This catch responds and then picks right back up where it left off. If I didn't have this catch here, everything just dies once it hits that error. See? 0, dead, done, no more. Because I didn't catch it and deal with it. I just said, you're done. So that's why catches are very valuable. Okay, they allow us to try, the steering's not working. Can we fix it? No, we're going off the road. Okay, we're done. If I had a catch there, I can fix it and get the thing back on track. No catch, toast. And so they allow us to deal with errors that might come up in our code somewhere, in our asynchronous code, and they can come up, okay? Imagine reaching out to a website and trying to pull in some data, and lo and behold, the website is not working, right? Imagine trying to connect to an external website that's not working. Now in a browser, that's fine, right? But here it's not. Now, the way that the catches work, as I mentioned, is it jumps over everything else to hit that catch, and then it keeps going. What happens if an error occurs in any of these? There's no catch. And so let's try that. Okay, so this error is occurring in a then that appears after this catch. That means it always looks below and says, is there a catch below me? If there's no catch below, there's nothing to catch it and fix it and resolve it and try to get things back on track. So it starts, it hits this one, okay? prints out the error, and then it runs into a new problem. Throw error, where's that? Oh, that's here, oops. So it starts, it hits the error, prints out the value of the error. This is what's printing out the value of the error. If I took that away, we wouldn't even see this. Okay. Then it gets things back on track here, goes into this next one, runs into another error, and then it starts looking down. Are there any catches? Nope. So it's unhandled, an unhandled promise rejection error. It's not handled, it's not managed, it's not caught. So the real nitty gritty of this, you're not going to have to worry about. Okay. You're not going to have to, you may have to throw errors, but I'll walk you through that. Okay. But is this catch? Yep.
So our asynchronous code at the block level is still synchronous then?
Well, it's synchronous with these. Yeah. So it's like, do this, and which is why it's called then, right? Do this, then do this, then do this. Yeah. Yeah. So we're creating this piece of synchronous code. But here's the thing. Right? We can run this immediately. And this big thing of synchronous code is not blocking the next command. Okay, so this chunk of code is not stopping line 32 from running immediately. So run right now, then it runs 0. But if I like had set timeouts or whatever in there and run right, and then, right, so whole code can still be working, doing stuff, and all these little pieces are waiting for each other. But this console log runs like almost immediately because it's not waiting for this stuff to finish. So these are all tied together, but the rest of it is not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so let's say we had some more actual complicated code within the then.
Yep.
That would affect like the load time and the output and in what order.
Yeah. Well, not what order. Like, so if we had like more complicated stuff here, which we will have, like I do this all really simply, but you will have more complicated stuff. Like use case, you will reach out to a website, you will grab data. Then once you successfully have the back, then take that data and insert it into the DOM. That is your use case. That is what we're going to be doing here. Okay, go out and get data. Don't know how long it's going to take, probably only a couple seconds. Then when you get it back, insert it into the DOM. So this then could have like 50 lines of code inside. And that's fine. And then once you're done inserting it into the DOM, do something else after. That would be a very common, that's pretty much what we're going to be doing most of the time. Which is why I'm not like, these catches, I'm going to get you to practice it because it's important, but we're not going to be using them that much. Okay, so don't linger on the fact that try it tonight, see if you can figure it out. This next, one more thing to show you. Okay. Promise.all. Promise.all. And let me just double check my syntax on this. Yeah. Promise.all. Promise.all, where am I here? Promise.all. Accepts Actually, I'll just steal this right from my example here. So I have 3 promises. I'm just going to take this reject off here because we don't need it. I have 3 promises. They're not dependent on each other. And I will show you a real live example of why this is useful, okay? Because if I just said that our typical use case for promises is going to be go out, get stuff, bring it back, display it on the DOM, and we're pulling from 3 different websites, and we're then drawing our web page from data from those websites, we don't want those pieces to come in separately. Like, oh, this one took 5 seconds. Oh, this one took 3 seconds. Oh, this one took 10 seconds. And so it looks like the website is loading piecewise, like, oh, this loaded. And then 3 seconds later, oh, this loaded. Oh, and then 5 seconds later, this loaded. What we want to do is we want to wait until we have all the data we need. We got it from place A. We got it from place B. We got it from place C. Okay, now that we got it all, now let's draw it. Okay. Promise.all allows us to have multiple promises that are not dependent on each other. Like A doesn't depend on B, doesn't depend on C, but we do want to wait until the slowest one is done resolving before we start doing anything with it. So what promise.all says is don't do anything until all the promises have resolved. So what we have here is 3 promises. Promise 1, P1, P2, and P3. Okay, they all have different set timeout values. So they're all going to resolve at different times. This one's going to resolve with the value of 3. This one's going to resolve with the value of bar. This one's going to resolve with the value of foo. Okay, these are not accurate. Okay, and we've assigned them to variables. So the value of P1, P2, and P3 are all promises. They're all these promises. And again, they're resolving at different, let's make it 1, 2, and 3 seconds. Okay. Promise.all accepts an array of promises. When it has finished, it then takes the values from all of them and prints and has them in an array. So inside here, we have an array of values, 3 bar foo, which we can iterate over if we wanted to. Okay, we can do whatever we need to with them. But the thing is, this doesn't run until all the promises have resolved. And this is a real thing that we use because we may not want to start doing something. We have all the pieces of information. Now, these pieces of information may not be needed to work together, but we just want to make the experience seem cohesive. And again, I'll show you this on probably Monday or Tuesday. I'll show you how this works because I'll ask you to use it. Actually, I'll ask you to use it tomorrow's example. And then I'll show you Monday in the result why you would want to use it. Okay. Okay, promise.all. So let's run this and see console.log. Check out the values. Right here. Oop. And we're starting to get some stuff in here. Okay. So let me run that again so we can see. So nothing's happening until they all resolved. It took 3 seconds. Took 3 seconds because only as fast as the slowest one. So we're waiting until they all resolve. Once they all resolve, then do this piece. And remember, if you look again, the values is an array of the return value, of the resolve values. Okay, so values is an array of these resolve values, 3 bar foo. Okay, so if you need to do work, you can do work in here, inside here. Consequently, promise.all also returns a promise if you wanted to chain more thens onto it. You'll never need to do that, but just additional information. Promise.all, okay, runs, so it doesn't run until all these promises are resolved, which gives us that opportunity to wait for the slowest one. Okay. The car doesn't leave until the last friend has entered. That slow friend who's always chatting with other people. Come on, we're trying to go. Okay.
Sorry,
That's
question.
Yep.
So the parameter, sorry. So the parameter of promise.all is like the array of promises, right?
Correct. The argument, yes.
Yeah, what if you pass in some other stuff? What will happen?
Good question. Nothing. It only cares about promises. Interesting. I guess it resolves instantly. I thought it skipped over that, but
Oh, okay, I see. It's a result of a promise, right? An array of result of promises. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's
So pretty
resolved
much,
or rejected.
pretty much, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, these are going to be the results. Once these results have been fulfilled, then it can start its work. And I'm guessing if you have results right away, it will just run instantly. It won't wait. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions? So I've got a little bit of some stuff to play with today. It's a little tricky because I don't want to give you code samples and so I say create a new JavaScript promise, throw an error, add it and catch. If you don't know how to throw an error, you're going to have to go into that reading that I asked you to do yesterday. Okay. So you can learn how to throw an error. Add a then and catch to the promise, determine which one will get executed. Create a new promise inside of a promise. Inside of the promise, create a new promise, and inside of that promise called set timeout to execute after 2 seconds. Upon execution, set timeout should call the reject function. But this time, the reject function should be the second parameter to then. What's the difference? Okay, so remember, catch versus 2 parameters to 2 arguments to a then. Okay, use the following function, return a promise, and append it to a chain of 4 thens. Or use the following function that returns a promise and append it to a chain of 4 thens. In each pass along value, adding 1. So this is very much like what I did in class today. In the previous block of code, add a catch between the second and third. Figure out how to force an error to occur. Again, I link you right to the page on how to do it. Notice you can throw any value you desire. Okay. And then last but not least, use promise.all and create a set of promises. Use set timeout, that resolves all at random times. Output the following characters array in order. This one's a little tricky. Okay, it'll make you think a little bit. Any questions on anything that we covered today? Tomorrow will just be, again, I won't be sending home any homework tomorrow night. Or if I do, it's going to be very limited. But it's probably just reading. Other than that, that's it. Remember, use your terminal all the time. Okay. And I will see you this afternoon at 12:30.
John?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Any questions again? Yeah.
Just on the part you have highlighted on number 5 here.
Yeah.
The promise all.
Yep.
When you say resolve at random times,
Yep.
you want it to be like a random timer, or do you want us to
Yep.
set different times to all of them?
Random time. I mean, like, it doesn't matter, whatever you want, really.
Okay.
That's not what that's not the main part. Like,
Yeah.
I care more about that they are resolving at different times. If you create, I would do it using math.random, because then I can just do it in a loop, but it's up to you.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. So I'll see you all at 12:30. Bye. Oh, sorry. Before I leave, let me know if you can connect to the website. You can? Okay, good. All right. It seems like it's intermittent, so just keep trying. Okay, if you can't, message me and I'll send you the stuff.